Good morning. What a good idea this is. I don't know. I assure you that I thank you for being here this morning. I love you for being here this morning. And I know that none of you are as nervous or skeptical or as uncertain about all of this as I am. So I think my assignment is to talk for about 20 minutes about love, and I haven't memorized my speech, but I've used the Nabokov set of index cards, which allowed me to shuffle things. And first of all, the big question is, why would anyone ask me to talk about love? I don't think I have any great reputation as a wonderful lover. I'm not married, I have no kids, I'm not in any sort of long-term romantic relationship right now, which would make me say I love you with any regularity. So I'm not an expert or a reliable source. I'm just a public TV producer. And I love a good challenge. I love an unexpected invitation, an assignment which I never thought I would get. And that's really, I think, what stimulated me and sort of said, let's give this a go. And so I've been thinking all week, or more than a week, since Nathan asked me, just sort of paying attention to the word love and trying to, see what I could gather. And I realized there really are lots and lots of loves beyond romantic love, even though that may be the first thing we think of when we hear the word love. So I've already used up some of my 20 minutes. But when I see one of these speeches, and even when I was watching some of the conventions and all of that, I always think, a list would help. Let me know how long you're going to talk. So I always think, the old trusted David Letterman, he did them in reverse order, but I have, it's already up, cool. I decided that I would give myself a lot of leeway, and I would call this 10 things I've thought about love this week, or 10 things that the topic of love made me think about, or something like that, which doesn't give me, very strict limits, but I hope that with this list of 10 things, I can at least surprise you a little bit, because I think that's what we all love most, surprises. So anytime I'm confronted with a new topic, whether it be cemeteries or hot dogs or whatever it is, I always like to go to thinkers and writers and books that have delighted me and surprised me in the past, and so I've done a little bit of that too. I try to figure out what I might add or regurgitate or discover or whatever about whatever the subject may be. I've actually done this, it was amazing to me. I'd done this already once this summer. I was asked to be an officiant at a wedding, and actually I've done 2 this summer. But at this one, they asked me to find a reading, not necessarily a biblical reading, but a reading that might be appropriate for a wedding. And so, having always been a fan of 17th century poetry and prose, I thought, the Shakespeare sonnets, they're all about love and all of that. There's really only one, I think, that talks about love in general, that's not directed at a person promising them immortality and love forever, but there's one that's about love, that's 116, sonnet 116. So I'm going first to Shakespeare. Sonnet 116, I have to remember to click these things through. Sonnet 116 is the one that begins, "Let me not to the marriage of true minds admit impediments. Love is not love, which alters when it alteration finds." It's always been a favorite. I won't go through the whole thing, but it just got me started. And I have books of quotations, familiar and unfamiliar. And I went and started looking through them. As a kid, I was always so happy that my father, when he was studying to be a Navy pilot during World War II, studied for a while at Dartmouth, and he had a class with Robert Frost. I don't think which my father could care less about, but he told us about it. And anyway, I found this quote from Robert Frost, who supposedly said one time in a conversation, "Love is an irresistible desire to be irresistibly desired." And I think that's a good thing. I think that's what gets many people up early in the morning to go to the gym. Then I also liked Victor Hugo in Les Miserables. Wrote that the supreme happiness in life is the conviction that we are loved. So, I mean, it really is truly an important and vital part of being alive. Of course, now, if you're interested in various quotes and finding out what people have said about a subject, you can go online. At Goodreads.com, the day before yesterday, there were 50,724 quotations about love. I didn't read them all, but I found some that I really liked. Gandhi said, "Where there is love, there is life." And I also liked this little bit of advice from Oscar Wilde. "Never love anyone who treats you like you're ordinary." I just think it's really wise warning and advice. And when you start doing this, you also remember that there were huge thoughts about love as well, and one of them is Jesus Christ's second great commandment, "Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself." I think all of them are good rules for life, good rules for finding love, for recognizing it when you get there. And on that website, I also stumbled across another piece of Shakespeare, Sonnet 18, which is one of the great love poems in the English language, that begins, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate." Which only made me think that, and actually this is my number 2 in the top 10 things that I'm doing. It's not been a great summer for love. This summer has been sort of terror and tension and all kinds of things. And it's not just because I hate muggy weather that I've been aware of this, but I'm also, I don't know how much more I can endure of Donald Trump on TV saying that he loves things. There was this famous, "I love Hispanics." He said, I love China, I love the media, I love the Bible, I love the vets, but the absolute worst, I love the poorly educated." But you can get yourself in trouble by dwelling on politics. So I thought I won't continue down that road. I'll quote Michelle Obama, who said, "When they take the low, we'll go high." So instead, I'm going to continue down Smallman Street into the city and say that, number 3, how good it is to love this city where we live. This place, not just the city, but the whole region. I always like to say that I love the cities that ring Pittsburgh: Greensburg, Beaver, Butler, Washington, PA. They're all really wonderful and great places to check out. And I always harbor this idea that the Mon Valley will be the next place that people start to flock to and check out because it's been neglected and there's lots of wonderful treasures to be found there. In fact, when Nathan asked me if I do this, he said, I thought you'd be right because you love Pittsburgh so much. And I hadn't, yeah, but I do. I do love Pittsburgh. It's probably obvious, I guess. It's, sort of the city of love. No, that's Paris, but it is a city that I love. And I grew up in Bethel Park. I graduated from Bethel Park High School. And then I went away to school in the Carolinas. I went to the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And I was away for 16 years. After I graduated, I got a job in South Carolina, working for public television. And I was not one of those Pittsburghers who was dying to get back. I was having a ton of fun at my job, and then a friend called me from Denver and said, "There's an ad in Broadcasting Magazine, one of our trade journals, that you should answer." And that's what got me back to Oakland. And that was in 1987. I didn't want to get back, but I wanted to try a new job. And I guess I liked it. That's 29 years ago. And so when I came back, I was so struck by the fact that Pittsburgh seemed so endlessly interesting and fascinating. And there were aspects to the city I'd never considered as a kid. And, I'd never really paid attention to geography. And I always say that when I came back, I could drive to Kennywood, but if you showed me a map, I don't know that I'd be really sure which river that was that Kennywood was on and all of that. So I've had 29 years of learning more about the city, and I love that. So I've also had TV as a means to share that love that I feel for the city and my enthusiasm. And so I think that we all still profit from the fact that as the 19th century became the 20th century, we were one of the richest and most important cities on earth. We had glass and steel and chemicals and oil. I think we often forget that oil was first pumped out of the earth 100 miles north of here in Titusville. So, all that we think about oil in the Middle East and everything, it all began here, and all that money funneled through Pittsburgh for a while. Also electricity with George Westinghouse and all his work with railroads and making long trains possible with his air brakes, and so many things happened here. There's no end, I think, to celebrating this city. But as much as I love Pittsburgh, I think number 4, I love what I get to do. I love my job. I love that I get to investigate things, to find out if the stories my parents told me were true. And because of the success we've had here in Pittsburgh, PBS started to pay attention. And actually, it was my Diners show that caught their real attention. And they said, let's think about some national shows like the Diners show. And sometimes all of those things, my love for the city and the people that are here, and the national shows tend to be about topics, aspects of modern life, I think, that sometimes get overlooked. From ice cream to cemeteries to flea markets, all those different things. And occasionally, though, all those factors may come together. And I was thinking about, I could show one clip. And so I like that people talk to me about things they love. And, people sometimes have odd affection for some of these topics, and that's always good. Enthusiasm about the topic will make for a better interview. And I thought what I'd show is a clip from a PBS national show that I did called A Ride Along the Lincoln Highway. And actually, it's a piece that happens right around here. It's the end of the show.
There's no concrete marker here, but if you travel to Lincoln, you see a lot of them. They were planted in 1928 by Boy Scouts working with the good folks at the original Lincoln Highway Association.
Well, that was their third and final marking of the Lincoln Highway, and they thought that would be permanent.
Also in 1928, the association partnered again with the Boy Scouts on a cross-country promotional tour. 4 Eagle Scouts got to travel the whole Lincoln Highway.
This was a wonderful opportunity for the scouts who were chosen for the trip. A chance to see the country and see the West.
Almost 70 years later, an archivist and historian in Ohio named Esther Oyster was national president of the Lincoln Highway Association and had to organize the annual meeting.
We were hosting the conference in Ohio in 1997, and I got to wondering, are any of those Eagle Scouts still living? I can do the math, they're 85 years old. And my sister-in-law searched on the internet, and 2 names were too common. One, there was no match. The 4th one match, he's in Pittsburgh, and that was Bernie Cano. Called him up, and he was the one.
And she couldn't wait. She was so anxious to find out if she had located one of those Boy Scouts.
And I invited him to be our banquet speaker in June. He was.
I hadn't heard about the Lincoln Highway for, 70 years in that, yeah.
Yeah, but he had memories of that summer trip and a diary.
My mother said I should keep a diary, and what my mother told me I did.
They did skits and first aid demonstrations in towns all along the highway.
It's kind of interesting. As a teenager, you know, you're pretty blasé in a way. My recollection, at least, is that we took it all in. We enjoyed it. It was exciting, but our blood pressure didn't go up.
After the '97 conference, Esther and Bernie went their separate ways until 2002.
And he was invited to California. They're going to dedicate the marker out in Lincoln Park, the Western Terminus marker. And he's to be the person to dedicate it. Since I knew him, they asked me to be his escort.
But when we met, she gave me a big hug, so we did kind of like each other to begin with.
Then we started seeing each other after that. And by the next conference, we were married.
We got married at 91, so I always claimed she's a gambler. Who'd want to marry a 91-year-old?
It was a whirlwind romance.
First 5 years are good. We only take 1 year at a time now.
Lovebirds of the Lincoln Highway.
So one fine day in 2008, we went with Bernie and Esther into Ohio.
They got some nice tomatoes there.
But some good sweet corn, too. This is some original Lincoln Highway here in Ohio. We're pretty proud of this stretch. A little bumpy, has character.
And who knows how such a story will end. For years, this was part of the best route from New York to San Francisco. The Lincoln Highway is just a great American road, a path from coast to coast, a line on a map that provides a way to get to places you didn't even know you wanted to go. It's old and it's confusing at times, but its charms are endless. Its potential's still amazing. And obviously, people love it.
Do I ever write it just for fun? I always write it just for fun.
I mean, I want to do it. I'm envious of people who've driven the whole thing in one trip.
It gave Americans an appreciation for the breadth of the continent that they simply hadn't had except maybe by train.
It brings us all together. The road, of course, was intended to bring people together.
I know as long as I travel on the Lincoln Highway, if I go far enough, I'll end up being home again.
This weekend coming up, I'm trying to think again, how far can I go east or west on the Lincoln Highway before I have to turn around and get back home.
Thank you. I left the end on because the last soundbite is Brian Butko being interviewed right outside here on the sidewalk. He works here and he knows a lot about the Lincoln Highway. But I think it's such a great love story, getting married when Bernie was 92, and his first thing then says, the first 5 years have been good. So I'm sad to report that Bernie passed away in 2014 when he was 102. But I know that part of the problem was one day he fell off his treadmill when he was exercising in the morning. If you ask me what I love about my job, I say that, you know, it's a lot of things. I love the research, I love the travel, I love working with the crew, I love editing, I love finishing a program, and the simple satisfaction that comes from making something. But most of all, if I think of all these factors, number 5 is I love interviewing people. I love the exchange of energy because that's what I think it is. And if part of my job is to make people feel comfortable in that situation, which is kind of odd to be standing there with a camera pointed at you and all of that. But I always encourage my crews to be as goofy as they want to be, because never do we want to make anyone think we're doing something important. It should be fun. And because it's an exchange of energy, I've got to put out energy in order to get it back. And I'm blessed with this face that looks like I'm always smiling. And even when I'm not happy, it looks like I'm smiling. And that helps a lot in the interview situation. So because I think people want to come back to match your energy at least. And I always say when you watch TV, you can tell when the reporter's not interested because the interview is low energy, because the person being interviewed is coming back with the same interest level as the person interviewing. Anyway, I love the interview. I sound like Donald Trump. But there are lots of things, I think, also to love just about TV. And number 6 is, can TV teach us anything about love? And certainly an amazing part of my working at WQED for 29 years now is I got to meet and work with Fred Rogers. I even made a program about him called Our Neighbor Fred Rogers, which was recast and reshuffled several times, including after his death in 2003. The show was renamed Fred Rogers, America's Favorite Neighbor. He may be the only person I've known personally who wrote and has published things about love. And so I decided that maybe it would be appropriate to take a moment with the world according to Mr. Rogers, important things to remember. And actually, one of the first things in the book about love, I think, helped to describe me. He said, the thing I remember best about successful people I've met all through the years is their obvious delight in what they're doing. And it seems to have very little to do with worldly success. They just love what they're doing, and they love it in front of others. I don't know, I think that's true. But I mentioned my crew and how important they are. No one makes a television program by himself or herself. And Fred also says, it always helps to have people we love beside us when we have difficult things in life. And sometimes making those programs can be difficult, but it's always good to have the crew beside me. I could have talked, I think, the whole morning about love of learning. And I totally agree with a college professor of mine who said, although you don't want to hear this, you will get tired of everything in life except learning new things. And I think there's a certain amount of wisdom in that. And Fred wrote about his grandfather. He said, learning and loving go hand in hand. My grandfather was one of those people who loved to live and loved to teach. Every time I was with him, he'd show me something about the world or something about myself that I hadn't even thought of yet. He'd help me find something wonderful in the smallest of things, and ever so carefully, he helped me understand the enormous worth of every human being. My grandfather was not a professional teacher, but the way he treated me, the way he loved me, and the things he did with me served me well as any teacher I've ever known. So Fred also, I think, offers a little warning that understanding love is one of the hardest things in the world. And I think that's also true. It's a mystery. And at the same time, it's always good to hear from Fred because I think a little Mr. Rogers in the morning is always good. Understanding love may be one of these hardest things, but most of us, or many of us, if not most of us, also know that it's easy to love a pet. For some reason, we all can love a dog or a cat. That's my number 7. I don't know how good I've been about enumerating the things, but number 7 is love me, love my dog. I am more of a dog person than a cat person, but I think they both can bring up those same feelings of affection. And I know that we can all be suckers too, so I wanted to show you this. Oh, I forgot to show Fred, the young Fred. Oh, no, it's not right. I hope there's another clip. What do you think, Nathan? There it is. Play.
You're my buddy, my pal, my friend. It will be that way until the end. And wherever you go, I want you.
Making the most out of every mile. That's why I got a Subaru Impreza.
Love. It's what makes a Subaru a Subaru.
I had to include that because as the week went by, I heard the Subaru commercial so many times as I was thinking about love. And I think every morning on WESA, as I was listening to Morning Edition or something like that, I think Subaru underwrites something. And so I kept hearing that line, love, it's what makes a Subaru. So love can also be a shameless way to promote your product. And it can be a great rationalization for a habit. And those were some of the pictures we saw before there. That's Trevitt Hooper at Legume with a giant leg of goat. And my number 8 is sometimes I think I can taste the love. I know that some folks have trouble with alcohol. I can enjoy a beer, but I can take or leave the beer, and I like a good cocktail, but it's really the food that I love. I love eating and the whole ritual of being with people and enjoying a meal together. And I'm lucky that sometimes that love of food can work together with my job. And it also allows me to do a lot of this on social media, put pictures up. These donuts are from Mary's Donuts at Rogers, Ohio. And I thought they were appropriate because if you've never been to Rogers, Ohio on a Friday morning like this, you should really do that. It's the biggest flea market around Pittsburgh, and it's a good drive, and Mary's Donuts are part of the attraction there. And there's a little stream that runs through the grounds, and on the far side of the stream, there's just people who've come to sell stuff like a yard sale, and that's my favorite part. But it also, a visit to Rogers means that you also walk into the permanent buildings and find the Amish donuts at Mary's. And that was just a breakfast that I made recently that I took a picture of. With all the foods that I find unusual or attractive or simply delicious, I know that there's love involved. I really love oatmeal raisin cookies, and I've been thinking about pitching that to Pittsburgh Magazine, maybe a story about where to find the best or some of the best or a few of the best oatmeal raisin cookies around here. And I have 3 proposals in at PBS right now. Sometimes people want to know, what are you doing? And they said they were interested in more food shows. We did 2 last year, a few great bakeries and a few good pie places. And my cameraman said, we should keep up with that little brand that you've created. And so we've proposed 3 new programs to PBS. A few special seafood spots, a few delicious dumplings, and a few fantastic food trucks. And we developed the proposals and budgets and all of that, and they have it, and we're waiting. We're waiting for a green light if we get it. I'd love to do all 3 of those programs, but it's still up in the air, and we don't know, but it would be a nice way to continue my outrageous love of food. Now, it's also hard to think about love and not think about love songs. And that's my number 9. I think almost every song is about love and its effects, good and bad. Listing them is easy, it's fun, and I've been playing this game with people all week. Tell me, when I say love, what song comes to mind? What the world needs now is love. Love makes the world go round. Love is a many-splendored thing. There's lots of Beatles songs. All You Need Is Love, Can't Buy Me Love. Then there's, somebody said immediately, Radar Love, which I thought was a weird one. Love Me Do, Love Stinks. And actually, one of my favorite Van Morrison songs, Have I Told You Lately That I Love You? I'm not a musician, but I do love these songs, and I think everybody loves a good love song. But it also forces you to consider, what's the origin of all this? How do we know? Where does this come from? And I think most aspects or many aspects of love will always be a mystery. Loving is just, I think, part of being human. It's something that we do naturally, and any one of us who has a family or siblings or extended family knows that there's also a special kind of love there that seems very powerful. And in thinking about this, I remembered it has to be one of my earliest memories. I'm 4 or 5. My mom used to play piano. I think we saw the picture. There she is. It's my mom and me and my brother Skip. But Mom used to play the piano. She wasn't any kind of virtuoso or anything. She just did it. She had learned it as a girl, and we had a piano in our living room. And sometimes she'd just play in the afternoons. It was, something to brighten the day. And I can remember sitting next to her on the piano bench in our living room. She had sheet music for popular songs, and she would play them. And occasionally she would sing. I think she'd stopped doing all of that by the time I was 10. I don't have any later memories of it. But when I was 4 or 5, it seemed to be, I remember it as being somewhat common. And I'd sit beside her on the bench, and at some point she'd always play this song, and she'd sing to me, I like Ricky Lovin', good old Ricky Lovin', played by a boy just like you, or something like that. And I can remember as a little kid, I couldn't read. But I said, Mom, I know it doesn't say that. I know that's not real. And she goes, yes, it is. Maybe it is. You just don't know. And she would tease me about that. And that's a little frustrating as a kid. But I also knew how wonderful it was that my mom would sit at the piano and sing to me about how much she loved me. And I think, that could be the source of all the loves that matter to me. And it was mysterious and reassuring, and I think it was magical. It was just my mom talking to me about how much she loved me. And so later when I learned to read, I found out the song was an old one called I Like Mountain Music. I can't imagine my mother liking mountain music, but she had that song, and it was from the 30s, and I don't know, maybe she knew it as a girl, but I really do think that love we feel for our moms and that we get back from our moms is crucial in all of this. And I don't know, maybe all my love began on a piano bench on Priscilla Drive in Bethel Park. So my number 10 is I love you too, Mom. Still do, and how can I ever thank you enough? So that's my number 10. I thank all of you too for being here, and I say good morning.